That's new.
It feels like home.
Ooh. DJ Timmy, bring it up.
After the midnight.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Zach,
And this is After the Midnight.
a podcast dedicated to the band The Midnight.
Each week we take a deep dive into each of their tracks.
This week we're taking a look at track 3 from their EP Days of Thunder, We Move Forward.
I was like, oh, this guy's awesome, and I love the lyrics, and this is great. So went down and we just clicked, and I remember just started playing some chords on the piano, and he was like, I like that. And then within probably 10 minutes, he had written the verses for the first 2 verses for We Move Forward, which is one of the songs on the album. So that's kind of what started our I mean, we didn't know if it was going to be the Midnight at that time. This is like almost 4 years ago. So that was kind of what started our relationship, and we became good friends. And yeah, it was just there was a chemistry in the studio, and we were both at a point, I think, where you were like, let's just kind of not write for anyone specific. Let's just write what feels good. And that, looking back, probably was because we had the Midnight to do. You know, it was out there in the ether waiting for us to do it.
I love how he says that. It was out there in the ether waiting for us. It was destined to happen to us. That's great.
I know, I love that too. He just looks at it as something bigger. Like they had no idea that, you know, this was gonna be what it was, and especially stylistically. I mean, that's, you know, in the 2 episodes leading up to this one, like, this is going to be the biggest departure for anybody who's never heard the Midnight, or maybe is just getting into the Midnight. This is a big change in sound, and it really shows, and we'll touch on it a little bit later. Tim will talk about it, but you can really hear what he was into before he really took that deep dive into synthwave. A lot of that, I think, comes through on this song.
Yep, it's definitely a lot more progressive house. And yeah, I mean, it's really interesting just because this is the first song they wrote, so they had no idea what they were doing. This was just kind of the style that Tim was into at that point. And I mean, I think it's interesting for Tyler, because Tyler is really, you know, a folk artist at this point. You know, I don't know if he dived into any electronica other than this, but so I really want to know I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the studio whenever this is being recorded, just to know what Tyler was feeling about this, because it's definitely a departure from even his stuff.
Me too, especially because the lyrics are, for Tyler, I mean, I think that they're still really, really visual and really, you know, paint that picture, but in a lot more simple way. Like, as we get into it and listen to it, you know, as he's, you know, talking to us about we move forward, we can't move back. It's almost like it was written with that house feeling in mind, like something that you could hear in the club, something that's really easy to remember, that's really simple, that just kind of weaves its way through the track. It definitely is a lot more simplistic compared to some of the other stuff we hear Tyler do, even on Days of Thunder. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, you know, how quickly they got comfortable together in that room, you know, how that started off. And I know Tim said, like, he played a couple chords for Tyler, and then Tyler kind of went from there, which is cool, because that sounds like that's like 90% of their writing process, is that Tim just comes with a loop or a couple chords, and Tyler does his thing. Tim will go play some Call of Duty or something like that, come back an hour later, and then he's got something from Tyler, and he kind of crafts around that.
There's not a whole lot of lyrics, like you're saying. Really, the most of it is him saying we move forward because we can't go back, which definitely fits the genre.
We hear that lushness that Tim's really known for, you know, the whole environment that he creates, and the production it's gorgeous, but man, did they really hone in and craft that sound. It's such a stylistic departure from what we know now, but still it's still a great song. It's a great song to put right in the middle of the record, I think.
And as you mentioned on the last episode about how, I mean, they could have easily shelved this, but I think it's great that they included it because, it shows the history and it shows where they started. And I love that. So let's take a listen.
That's called the 4 on the floor bass drum pattern right there. It's really popular in like house and club music, just the really driving, simplistic drums, but they work really good here. So yeah, awesome start so far.
Yeah, dreamy. What's going on with like that did you hear that?
Yeah, so I actually noticed that whenever I was listening through earlier today too. Like Tim, it's interesting to hear his production chops at this point because he's giving us a lot of like ear candy, a lot of little things that are bouncing around, but he's really gotten so good at honing in on that little stuff. Like it kind of stands out a little bit more in the mix here, and I think that's just because of the level of producer that he was. But yeah, that's just a bunch of random, sounds like percussion kind of one-shots, but man, I love the synthesizers that we're getting here in the beginning of this song. Like it really reminds me of like Adam Young, or I know we were talking earlier, like Chicane, like just those really lush, airy EDM house synths.
Sun in my eyes and the gold coast shining, and the girl with the braids in her hair. Steady breeze, and though I was falling out, follow her anywhere. The sky turned gray and the flash flood warning. She smiled and she took my hand. She kissed my lips and the rain came pouring, swore I heard a marching band.
I love when Tyler first comes in. I mean, he gives, that little rhyme scheme, even if it's not as intricate as normal Tyler, it's still just a very, Tyler way to paint the picture.
There's some panning left and right.
Huge thing here, like the main thing that's building the melody right now is a grand piano. Like when do you ever hear that in the midnight or with Tim? I mean, that's a one-off type thing if I've ever heard one.
Hanging out of the third story window, oh, you were a sight to see. The black dress,
I love that part. He mentioned that this is actually something that he saw. That he wrote this down in his book, and yeah, these lyrics, I mean, he's just all the visuals he has, Gold Coast shining, girl with braids in her hair, steady breeze. He really seems to talk about the girl, and he seems to talk about a lot of like weather type stuff. Sunset skies, the paint is peeling, the wind is blowing.
just got to give him props as a producer, because no matter what genre he's in, he just kills it. I mean, this is at this point 6 or 7 years old that we're listening to this now, and yeah, I mean, it still just sounds amazing. The mix and everything like that sound great.
That's really interesting. I'm hearing a lot of things I never heard before.
I'm hearing a lot of new things this time around too, and one of the biggest things for me, especially now that Tim's going live so much on like Twitch and kind of showing off, you know, how he produces kind of more under the hood, is this song is very well polished, very well put together, but in terms of how he normally kind of does things, it's really simple. Like it's I think that he's gotten really good at like adding in, you know, little things at the last part of a verse going, or a pre-chorus or something, just like a little couple notes or a synth that you only hear one time, but your brain catches it and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so good. Like he's really gotten into kind of the bells and whistles of producing, and I don't think we hear that here as much, but I think that he was just being inspired by different stuff, you know, at the time. So it's cool to hear some signatures of him, but man, to think of how much he's grown as a producer.
And just ending on that grand piano there. Sounds like some rain as well.
Before we even knew that we were going to do something called the Midnight, it was going to be kind of 80s synthwave, and that's why the We Move Forward actually sounds a little bit more progressive house and slightly more, I guess you could I wouldn't call it hard, but like the drums are a little bit more, slightly more I tried to add some 80s elements to the drums, but that's why that sounds a little bit more housey than maybe the other songs do. And then it was really, we loved writing together, but we didn't know what we were writing for.
I definitely had a moment in time with this song. I played it quite a bit for a while, and it was interesting because I guess back then I really wasn't paying attention to the genres, and I was just listening, and I liked it. And I really went through an EDM phase many years ago, so I think that's why I enjoyed it.
It's a good song. I mean, it's a well put together song. I used to draw tons of inspiration from artists who sound like this. I mean, one of my biggest inspirations is Adam Young. I know he's dabbled in trance and you know, EDM and house and stuff like that, and so I love that sound, and to hear Tyler over the top of that and know that that was Tim that did that makes me love it even more.
Yeah, I'd love to know what some of his like solo fans thought whenever he took on the Midnight Project, if they were for it, against it, or they just love Tyler, so they were all for it. So this is actually our first time hearing this. This is the demo version of We Move Forward. So let's take a listen and see what changed.
Sun in my eyes and the gold coast shining, and the girl with the braids in her hair.
I kind of like that synth.
Steady breeze and no, I was falling out.
So that bass line isn't in the final song. That's the biggest thing I hear right now.
The flash flood wanted, she smiled, she took my hand. She kissed my lips and the rain came pouring, swore I heard a marching band. And we move forward.
like this part.
We can't go back. Hanging out of the story window. Oh, you were a sight to see. The black dress that bends when the wind blows. Roll back the tide for me. It feels like home.
That's new.
It feels like home.
Ooh. DJ Timmy, bring it up.
That's cool. Yeah, that was actually part of the. So there was an ARG game for Monsters, and this was released in there along with some other demos. So
Cool. I like that.
yeah, that was interesting.
Biggest takeaways is sounds like there was some subtle lyrical changes. That there was like a really driving bass line behind Tyler, one part that I didn't pick up on the final version of the song unless it's tucked way back in the mix.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear like that it's called a demo version because it sounds like a finished song. It just I wonder if like Tim got this done and then they decided to do the midnight and just kind of went into this and made it more 80s, because definitely don't hear anything in there that I dislike. Like I really enjoyed that version of the song.
Yeah, it was only 2 minutes versus the 8-minute final one, but yeah, that was cool.
I don't know, anytime you hear it, at least for me, it just takes me back to knowing that like this is where it all started. This is them getting in a room together, just knowing each other's names and having some A&R say, hey, I think you guys would work good together, and sitting together and seeing that chemistry that they still use all the time, like just banging stuff out really fast and then just kind of putting it away. But like, what made Tim go back and pull that up and be like, man, I remember that session I did with Tyler. I'm so glad whatever compelled him to do that day.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into Days of Thunder, the title track.
Yeah, it's been awesome doing this deep dive on We Move Forward, guys. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate the support. Go follow us on Twitter. Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Catch you next week.